Good afternoon, Delegate, Wranglers, and the wider world. How are you all doing? It is Wednesday. No, it's not. Scrap that. It's Tuesday, the 16th of March. Oh my God, where are the days going? I am very pleased to be having another masterclass on the show today with Rob Haworth of Event Safety Plan. It's going to be an Event Safety Masterclass. I know this one's been very popular. Lots of people interested in, finding out what they can and can't do. Some good advice from Rob on the way. Can't wait to share that with you guys. It's going to be fantastic. So on with the show. We've got a couple of new things today. Woo! First of all, we're going to be showing a little poll that we ran on LinkedIn with some interesting findings. We're just going to show you that before we start the interview with Rob. And then later on, we've got a brand new feature that we started on the Delegate Wranglers called the Weekly Lowdown. We're working with Mash Media to bring you some bite-sized positive news clips from the previous week. So look out for that at the end of the show. And also we're going to show the DW Live panel. Another fantastic week as usual. And next week, we've got some more new people coming on as well. So guys, if you want to join in on that, please do. We'd love to have you along. And if there's any questions you want us to ask, please send them in to us at info@thedelegatewranglers.com. So before we go any further, I'd just like to say a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Stream for putting on the show. We've got a brand new system at the moment, so it's all funky. So thank you to Dom, Callum, Ed, and the team at Stream, really helpful. Events Case for the registration services. Brilliant job as usual, guys. And also our season sponsors, I should say, Event and we, as I say, we've been working with them every week in this season. So this is week 6, and we've got a nice little video. I caught up with Andy from Event this week to ask him about how you guys can get some demos and things like that. So over to you, Andy. So, Andy, we have learned a lot about Eventer over the last few weeks, including your on-air platform, much more, all your coming developments. Do you want to tell us how people can book a demo with you? Is that possible? They can book a demo one-to-one, or do they have to wait for a kind of group one? And, what's the kind of journey? What will they kind of learn on those demos?
Okay, so so we do demonstrations, and we have the beauty of being able to show you the platform in action and take you both in front of camera, but also behind the scenes to see how everything works. We try and align it to exactly your needs. So once we understand the vision of your event and what you're trying to achieve, the technology, it offers us so many possibilities that we will talk through. So it's simply a case of we can go to the website, which Neil will put a link in where you can click and book a demo. That'll come straight through to myself, and I'll make sure one of the team contacts within 24 hours to book that next step. And it could be for you and or your team. In addition, we also run customer events. So that's actually a mini event that we run. The next one's taking place on the 25th of March. And I'll put a link in for that. You register and you can go through that, and it will just be a showcase of everything, but you will be an actual attendee on that.
Fantastic. So how often do you run those kind of global events?
So we're looking at running them in our region every 3 weeks at the moment. It's going to be slightly disrupted for Easter, but we're trying to get as many people in, but also show latest developments and really get people involved in it as much as possible.
Yeah, it sounds great. So I thoroughly recommend, guys, you get a demo booked in with Andy, or, catch one of these global events. What's the best way to contact you, Andy?
So the usual email and phone, or going through the website and click on the request a demo, and that will come straight through to myself as the first point of call. So fantastic. Open to everything.
Fantastic, Andy. We'll put them in the wrap up as well. So thank you very much, and on with the show.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Big thanks to Andy there. And guys, we'll put the link to book a demo with Eventer in the chat at the end of the show, and also in the wrap up as well. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. You rock. And for the first time, we have got more people on YouTube than we have on the Facebook group. Come on, guys, join in. So a really popular show. It's amazing. So thank you very much. So back to today. Yeah, we ran a poll on LinkedIn recently to the effect of, with a few weeks gone since the PM's roadmap back to normality, how are you feeling about your business and what lies ahead in 2021? And I think Callum is going to show that for us now, the results, which were really good. It basically says that 66% of us were cautiously optimistic, 25% were very positive, already planning, and 9% thinking, I don't think much will change. So to me, that's the really, really good question, really, really good answers. It shows that we're, quite rightly cautiously optimistic. But, on the whole, it's very positive. A quarter of people are already planning for new events. So, yeah, we're really, really delighted with those. And what we'll do is we'll take another snapshot in about 6 weeks and see where we are then, once we've got a bit more information from the Prime Minister and, whoever else makes these decisions. So here we go, back to the show. Without any further ado, this is the one you've all been waiting for. This is a chat with Rob Haworth of Event Safety Plan. Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Neil. How's it going?
I'm all right. Just a normal day in your house there, Rob, is this?
Yeah, absolutely. I've retired to the drawing room. No, I'm actually in RSA House today, top London venue, actually doing some filming for another training course, which is taking place next door. But they've allowed me into just this little room just around the corner, just to do this now. But no, I don't think that I've got this much distance between the walls in my living room, let alone a massive fireplace.
I was going to say, just check out the echo. Just check out the echo, the size of that room.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. We're all okay, Rob. Really looking forward to this. So I know this is going to be a masterclass, and I've seen your notes, and they're amazing, the things you're going to cover. So guys in the chat rooms, as I say, once again, thanks for tuning in. If you've got any questions, please send them in. Try not to make them too specific to your own situation, because Rob probably won't be able to answer everyone individually. But if it's something that the whole group could benefit from knowing, that would be a really good idea. But please send the questions in. This is your chance to ask Rob, who is an expert in this field, and particularly, I know he's had his finger on the pulse. We had Rob on early on last year when the lockdown first happened, and I think things have probably changed quite a lot since then. Rob, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we first spoke originally, I did that one from my bedroom, and I think at that point, just we were a couple of weeks in. Maybe this would last for 3-4 months. We'd be back to normal by Q4 2020. Nothing to worry about. A nice summer off. If only we knew.
If only we knew. Yeah.
A very different place. A very different place.
Yeah. Okay, Rob, I'm going to hand over to you. I mean, I'll be here to ask some questions and stuff and run a couple of polls. I'm just about to start one now, guys, in the chat room as well. But yeah, I'm over to you, Rob. I'm in your hands.
Well, the first thing I thought I would do, just to sort of set the scene a little bit, would be to run through some of the dates we've been given by the government, and just explain where we think we're at in that respect. I'm going to have to read them off my phone though, because I can't remember them all off the top of my head. So obviously we've been past the 8th of March. 8th of March was the key moment for schools returning, and as I understand it, weddings are now permitted for up to 6 people. We're heading towards the next step, which is the 29th of March, which is where we're heading towards outdoor sports and leisure. And I think that's not really event specific. That's more to do with group activities and individuals going out and doing exercise. But then as we head towards step 2, 12th of April, we're looking at outdoor attractions, outdoor hospitality. Again, I think this is more restaurants rather than what we may consider to be hospitality in the events industry. And at that point as well, 12th of April, domestic overnight accommodation will start to reopen. So those of you who are in the hotel business, that should be a key date for you. And just as an aside, one of the people that we share our office building with back in Gloucester are a hotel booking agent, and they have been flat out. I mean, they've had people in every single office space answering the phones, booking things. So it definitely feels from that perspective like things are moving forward.
That's amazing, Rob. That's amazing.
I caught up with the owner of the business, and he'd had 300 emails overnight looking to book restaurants or hotel stays, and they are dealing with the top end, really bespoke, beautiful sort of maybe Cotswold, although they do the whole country. Really nice, expensive hotel rooms, and they are getting booked. They are very busy, so that's definitely positive.
Wow. Yeah.
12th of April, we're down to weddings with 15 people, and event pilots can begin. And I know that there's been some news recently in the last week or so about when the sorts of events that they're looking to pilot. Definitely some of the larger sports events, and also some club nights in Liverpool. Neil, I suspect you'll be the first one in the queue, right?
Yeah. No, I have actually heard as well that there's going to be a business event taking place in Liverpool as well. So I'm going to try and get myself onto that if I can.
Yeah.
With a bit of luck.
So step 3, 17th of May, indoor entertainment and attractions. So that we're thinking is probably some of the less event related, but more sort of fixed activities. I don't know, some of the aquariums or something, I suspect.
Right.
And then after that, we're into some really interesting things. So most significant life events will be able to take place with up to 30 people. Indoor events, 1,000 people capacity, 1,000 person capacity, or 50% of the existing capacity. And also outdoor events, 4,000 capacity, or 50% of the original capacity. And I think that how that will come about, we'll talk about in a minute, and how that will be monitored and managed by those event organisers that are working in those areas. There may be international travel on the 17th of May with very few restrictions. And then by the time we get to the 21st of June, supposedly no legal limits, larger events and live events with unlimited people. But, and of course, I'm the miserable safety guy that everybody has learnt to love and hate over the years. I'm not sure that we're at that point. And we obviously we talked about this before Neil. When the Prime Minister made his announcement, one of the key things he said was there will be no legal restrictions. And the key word in there for me is legal, because he didn't say there will be no restrictions. And I can't believe that was an off-the-cuff comment. I can't believe that they hadn't been through, many revisions on the script for that particular announcement. So the question is, what does he mean by no legal restrictions? And having talked to a number of colleagues at Event Safety Plan and wider safety colleagues, we think that this is almost likely to be, or almost certainly likely to be, further restrictions, further requirements for assessments, temperature checks, testing. Sorry.
I was just going to say, Rob, we were talking about this beforehand, weren't we? I think the Prime Minister was very deliberate in his lack of commitment to exactly what we could do on those dates. It was all lots of words like should and hopefully and if everything goes well, which I do understand. But I'm hoping that we can get some kind of update on that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and so as we've come out of each of the existing lockdowns and into the tier system or any of the sort of relaxing of anything, we've always had a little piece of guidance that's come out specifically at that point. And we've been waiting on that or what might happen in the next few months. And we haven't seen anything yet. There were 68 pages of sort of general focus on the 8th of March, but anything beyond that, we are still quite in the dark, really. And as a business, we've been having to talk to a number of local authorities across the country, talking to environmental health officers, events officers, to establish when we can open some of the businesses that we represent. And they don't have any sort of secret information. They don't have any guidance that we haven't seen. They're working to the same restricted information that we are. So the truthful answer is that they just don't know yet. So it may be the case that we're looking at testing on site. And I know that one of the polls that you've got today relates to testing. And
I'll run that one now, Rob. Good timing. Right.
Because I still think that we're going to have a duty of care. We're still going to have health and safety at work legislation. We're still going to be managed under the Licensing Act. So it may be that the COVID restrictions have gone, but the local authorities and licensing teams can potentially use other pieces of legislation to put in restrictions or challenges or cover themselves, which they haven't otherwise been able to do through the COVID legislation.
Rob, I've got a quick question on that. Sorry to interrupt. Do you think this will be affected for, smaller meetings? By smaller meetings, I mean kind of 100 people, 200 people in a hotel or a venue. Do you think we're going to have to get clearance from local authorities, or will a venue itself probably have to get clearance to say, look, we can do meetings up to 200 people or whatever?
I think it's very likely that will be led by the venue under their existing permissions or licenses, and they'll probably have a good relationship already with their licensing officer or environmental health officer. It could well be that, assuming that the guidance comes out and that the restrictions are as we've been told they're going to be, that actually the assumption can be made, we're within the regulations, we're at capacities that are 50% or less than the maximum number at any one time, so we can just continue. But it could be that a local authority may come and inspect a venue to check those numbers. I think it's unlikely that they would do that unless they'd had a complaint or had a reason to come and investigate that, simply because they don't have the resources. They don't have enough people to come and look at every single venue or every single location where that's happening. But I do think those who are applying for new premises licenses for temporary events or temporary event notices may have to jump through additional hoops still. So,
Rob, I'm just going to come back to you with some of the results of a couple of the polls that we've ran. So the first one we ran was, are you up to date with the dates for the roadmap to normality? 74% said yes, mostly. 26%, like me, I was one of them who said, nope, not 100% sure. And then the next one is still going on, but it's really interesting and good numbers for it as well. Who do you think should pay for the kind of testing for any kind of testing at a live event? So 15% of people said the venue, 73% or 74% now have said the client, and 12% said the delegate. So really interesting things. And I do have a question from Michelle Flynn for you, Rob, as well. And it's about vaccine. I mean, is that something like people who've had a vaccine? What difference does it make for delivering events or attending events if you've had the vaccine? Is that something you want to tackle now, or should we wait till later on?
No, we can talk about that now. In fact, this is another thing that we were discussing previously. It's interesting. So I'm not in an age range where I've been offered a vaccine just yet. I'm hopeful to get one relatively soon. And I know that other people on the call today are in an age range where they've been offered a vaccine, aren't they, Neil? But it's that perception from audience members, delegates, attendees, festival goers, whatever you want to describe your sort of end public as, what will their perception be? And I know I've talked to my parents about how they feel now that they've had the first of the vaccines, and does it give them a greater degree of confidence? Do they feel safer in it themselves? Is it less of a burden? And the answer is, from them, absolutely it is. And so are we going to see a massive rise in events for older people who maybe have had one or two of the vaccine treatments, or are we going to see the lower age ranges who maybe don't or have as good a sort of threat assessment to themselves and their own health? Certainly, we look after safety a couple of music festivals, nothing particularly big. One of them will be around 15,000 this year, I should think, but they are selling incredibly well. All of those events that have got tickets on sale are doing incredibly well. And at the moment, for us, it tends to be the younger audiences. So
I'm just going to say, so to answer, I think that what Michelle's trying to get to is, if you've had a vaccine, do you think you'll still need to, you'll be allowed like a pass into an event, or will you still need to go through the testing as well?
And that is a really good question. And the truth is, I don't know. I think that the whole sort of passport scheme for people that have had a vaccine is something that should be looked at. I know that certainly in the music industry, that's something that they're very keen to explore. But I suspect, and I'm not particularly in the travel industry, but I suspect the airlines that's going to be something that they really push for, because that will mean that their ability to effectively sell holidays this summer is going to be massively increased. Whereas, we may sort of follow on their coattails, but how that's going to be shown, I don't know. How do you prove it? What happens if somebody fakes it? How much responsibility do we as organisers have to take to make sure that any kind of passport is right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, isn't it? And no doubt there will be people, there will be faking to get to an event or something if if it allows them to go. Yeah, these are all questions that we all really need to know the answer to.
And the problem is that at the moment we are asking more questions than we're answering. We talking with the team at one of the festivals we work with, and it's a case of, so if we insist that everybody's had a test ahead of arrival, so they bring their pass certificate with them. What happens if 3 of them in the car had a negative test, the 4th one hasn't had a test at all? Do you make the assumption that all 4 of them could now be carrying the infection, and therefore you don't let any of them in? What happens if they suddenly get ill during the event? And that's a consideration as well. What are we going to do with people who suddenly get ill and are displaying symptoms? It might not be so much of an issue for a one-day conference or business event, but even if we suddenly include accommodation into that mix, how do we manage that? And do we have the processes in place, the paperwork and the procedures, and the staff with the right training to understand what needs to happen in the event that somebody is suddenly presenting with COVID symptoms?
But not only that, Rob, I think what's going to be really interesting is from a logistical perspective. I'm a former event organizer. You've got 500 people turning up to come to a conference or an exhibition. How do you logistically test those people, park them for 10 minutes and then say they're okay? How do you do that? That's a lot of thought is going to have to go into these things, isn't it?
Oh, it's even simple things like if we're still doing 2-meter distancing at an entranceway to collect a ticket, a delegate badge, have a test, whatever, 500 people at 2 meters each is 1,000. That's a kilometre of queuing space. Do venues have a kilometre of queuing space? I'm sure a lot.
I think they're going to have to do like a moving train almost. People are just going to have to walk, and then by the time you get to a certain point, it's 10 minutes and you get your results. That's the only way I can think it can be done.
Yeah, and it's you're right. The logistical considerations and the costs. The costs are not just a test, but the costs are the space to have, storage, the space for staffing to do this, the space then to allow people to wait. And, if they're having their test on site, that's one thing. If they're having a test a couple of days in advance, that's another. It would be nice if there was some sort of joined up way of proving that somebody had had a test. Our teams have been out on various film sets over the last 6 to 8 months, and quite regularly being tested. Ultimately, all we get is an email from the testing centre, from the lab. We don't get anything that's like irrefutable that my colleagues or I are actually clicking.
Yeah. Right, Rob, I have got so many questions in the chat room that I'm going to try and rattle through a few of them, and I know you've got a lot to get through, so we'll try and be quick with this, guys. Apologies. Avatar Thefty, hi Avatar, how are you? Hope you're okay. Friend of the show. Do you think that any additional insurances will be required by the organising venue? And do you think risk assessments will be hugely affected? I think I know the answer to this, Rob.
It's quite unlikely that you'll get COVID insurance. Event organisers, all the event organisers I know are struggling because simply there's just no cover. Nobody's interested. You almost couldn't pay any amount of money to get a level of cover. Standard cancellation is in place, that's no problem. But you've also got to watch whether your public liability and professional indemnity insurance will cover you for COVID. We've been obviously offering advice out to various customers and clients over the last year, but we still had to demonstrate that we had the right levels of competency to be offering advice. Otherwise, COVID was just stricken out of our professional indemnity insurance. So it's not as simple as cancellation, but actually making sure that you're insured should something go wrong. Now, the chances of somebody proving that they caught it while at your event is very low. But the way you
exactly
against that is exactly the second part of that question. It's risk assessment. It's making sure that you look at all elements of how you are going to plan your event, how you're going to deliver it, and then undertaking a COVID risk assessment, but also integrating COVID into the existing risk assessments that you've already got, working with the venues and that kind of thing. And I suspect now is probably a great time for me to plug. We're doing a COVID preparedness training course at the moment. You can find out more about it at eventsafetyplan.com/training. And that is really designed to help event organisers and venues understand what those risks are and better sort of prepare themselves for the fact that we're not out of the woods yet, Neil. I think there is some time to go before any of us
Yeah.
considered back to normality.
Yeah, we'll put that link up in the wrap up as well, guys, so that you guys can check it out. Or I'll ask Diane can put it on. Diane can put it on now, so you can hopefully. A quick question from Sarah Felfall, who knows in the same industry as yourself.
Yeah.
The HSE have recently started to subcontract workplace inspections to third-party private companies. Does Rob think that might end up being a thing as we see bigger venues start up?
It could be for the bigger locations. I mean, we've been training people in health and safety for like the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the stories we always say is you'll never see anyone from the HSE on one of your sites. They just don't have enough inspectors. And then, of course, we were delivering the training course and one popped up at one of our sites. And, of course, it went well because we know what we're doing. But you're right. There is an opportunity, particularly where there's a focus on public or particularly if complaints or somebody sees something that they shouldn't. And I know, in fact, I've been on a few site visits recently where even the perception of a group gathering, even if it's outdoors, is being frowned upon. And certainly in the construction sector, there's great fear of being closed down for something because they're all on targets to finish builds rather, and that could well be the case with the HSE. Now, sending people to site for the HSE will be an interesting one. Coming out of London Olympics, one of the questions was, do your inspectors have sufficient understanding of how the events and entertainment industry works? And of course, we were told that they did. But how many HSE inspectors or even subcontracted inspectors really understand what goes into the making of any kind of event, any kind of venue? So there'll be some work to be done.
I'm sensing a niche there, Rob, and an opportunity. Anyway, I'll move quickly on. Good question from Mike McGowan. When do you think site visits may be possible? I'm aware it's currently illegal unless as seen as essential. And my question is, how do you deem it essential? Any thoughts on that, Rob?
Absolutely. I think that as long as it is a difficult one because certainly site visits are taking place. I myself have been on site visits where actually it is essential because the projects that we're working on and the undertakings that we're doing have to happen because ultimately, as part of our working day, they are considered essential at that point. It is a difficult one. I think at the time when the travel restrictions are reduced, and I'm going to quickly look back at my notes because there are sort of general restrictions, and of course I haven't got it written down here. The stay-at-home order does get reduced at some point. I just can't remember which of the steps it is. It's probably step 2, I would imagine, maybe step 3. At that point, I think we're going to be in a much better place. Certainly when the hotels start to reopen for accommodation, I think certainly the arguments could be made. But again, there is that question of, as professional people, can we try and minimise any travel for as long as possible? But at the point when it becomes absolutely essential to your event, I think that's probably the case that you can go ahead with that.
Sure. Okay, Rob, we've got about 5 minutes before we go to the DW Live Show panel. Do you want to crack on with, I rudely interrupted you with about 10 questions. Do you want to crack on with where you're up to?
I'm just trying to remember where I was. So we've talked about a few of the things that I was hoping to cover, which is great because it means that they've come up and other people are thinking about them as well. As I said, I do expect there will be restrictions in place. So I think that it's essential that we plan for them as organisers now because I mean, I was production manager and still do production as well as doing health and safety. And so I've been planning stuff for 20 years. The problem at the moment is anything concrete. So planning for things is very difficult. My concern is that if the perception at the moment is we can just crack on as normal by the 21st of June, my worry is that that's going to have a negative impact on things that people are planning because ultimately we have to be ready to organise, to run these events as best we can. I think if we were planning them without with any form of COVID protection whatsoever, I think that would be a challenging situation because at the last minute, as we discovered previously, events were getting cancelled even when event organisers believed they'd done everything that was necessary. So I think that it's that old adage of, hope for the best but plan for the worst. I think in this situation, worst potentially still includes some level of COVID preparedness. And considering the logistical elements of that.
Rob, I was just going to say, you may cover this later on, so apologies and we can park it if you want to. But is there any kind of practical advice that venues can do now anything they can do, anything practical they can do to get themselves ready or to think about, because I'm sure that's what all the people who are from venues, want to know. And likewise for organisers as well, anything they need to do or gonna have to think about, emailing people and telling them they're gonna have to provide this, and logistical, scenarios that they're gonna have to do when they get on site, that kind of thing. Is there any advice you can give to us specifically yet?
I actually think that a lot of the venues and event organisers have probably been through this a couple of times already. And it's because of that stop-start thing that we've had, through lockdown and then not a lockdown and then another I think actually a lot of them are in a very good place. And certainly, when we were working with venues back last summer and working through revised protocols, new risk assessments, assessing routes through buildings, one-way systems, and that sort of thing. I think a lot of that is probably already in place. The challenge we've got is we don't know how those restrictions or expectations of the government are going to change, because we simply don't have the information or the guidance yet. So if it was me at the moment, I would be considering what we've already done, checking that those policies, procedures, paperwork, plans, training are all in place. But then I'd be waiting to see what comes out. And the worry is that it comes out far too late. And I know that, again, a couple of the larger festival clients that we've got, they just need to know what's going to be expected of them now. Because if they find out with 2 weeks to go, they can't put these things in place. There just isn't the time,
I know. I totally agree. These things don't just happen. People think they've just got all the answers all the time, but we need to know before, don't we? I mean, I've just had a question, Robert, on YouTube from Atalanta. Hello, Atalanta. It's likely that there are some festival attendees are not going to be part or fully vaccinated by the summer. Do you think that those i.e. those that aren't vaccinated, may be refused entry, or will they just need a negative test? I think that's going back to what we've been speaking about already, isn't it? Who knows?
I know. That's the problem. It may be that there is some guidance rather than legislation that recommends that. Of course, the challenge with any guidance is the difference between guidance and legislation. Legislation is something you can or can't do. Guidance is supportive to your own interpretation. The challenge comes when you do something that is not in line with the guidance. And therefore, how do you prove or provide evidence that whatever you're doing is okay, is acceptable, didn't go beyond the level of risk that would have otherwise been considered correct? So the challenge there, of course, is how do we make a decision if everybody's making slightly different decisions? And of course, you don't want to be the one event organizer, exhibition organizer, venue that is doing it exactly as you should be and correctly and right when nobody else is, because
nobody else is
problematic or challenging to work in and all that kind of thing. So I don't know. It could be that a negative test but no vaccine is acceptable, and it could be that that's decided on a customer by customer basis. When I say customer, I mean an organizer or organizer basis. One business event may decide that is acceptable. Another one might say vaccine or nothing, but that's a difficult call to make.
It's a really difficult one as well. I think we need a roadmap to the roadmap. We need to know when the next planning to tell us what what they're going to tell us, if you know what I mean. Because I don't know at the moment. It's just we've just been told those dates. I'm looking forward to the next update on this. Anyway, Rob, thank you for that. I'm just going to interrupt you slightly for one of my favorite parts of the show, the DW live show panel. As I say, we've got more and more people getting involved. Guys, please join in. It's good fun. Something you can be serious, you can be funny, but they're always entertaining. So here we go with this week's DW live show panel.
So I've made it to the movies now, fairly famous, excited. There's only one person that could play me in a movie. It's Ed Sheeran, isn't it?
Hey Neil, sorry, just wanted to say, I've chatted with the wife and she says that apparently in a movie of my life, I should be played by Pole Dart Guy. No idea who that is.
Jennifer Lawrence would play me in a movie because she's almost as badass as me. Not quite.
I would say Hannah Simone. She would be the one who plays me in a movie. If you've not seen her, she's been absolutely fantastic in the TV shows and films that she's been in.
So I asked some of my friends this because I didn't know what to say, and they have come back with Patsy from Ab Fab, which I'm not sure is a compliment or not. And so some of them came back with that, and a few of them have always said that I remind them of Binky from Made in Chelsea as well. So a bit of a combination of the both I'm going with.
Who would I play in a movie? My favourite movie of all time is the wonderful, wonderful Sound of Music, and I would play Julie Andrews, and I would be Maria. The hills are alive with the sound of music.
Oh, can I put my headphones back on now that Jan's finished singing? Thank you for that, Jan. Always entertaining. I think you slightly misunderstood the question there, but we loved it. Anyway, Rob, I hope you enjoyed that. I did see a sneaky cameo from you in there as well.
Since then, but obviously my wife's been cut. And so I did give you an original choice, but I went home and said to her, you know, who would play me in a movie? Because I don't really know. And she said, Pole Dark Guy. I have no idea who that is, but apparently that's what I've been told, and she's the boss, so I just do what I'm told.
It's a good compliment. Just take it. Don't ask questions. Just take it. Right. Do you want to carry on, Rob? And I will try and field some of the questions in a second, and then bring them up when they're appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm nearly done, really, and I'm happy to answer questions in the last few minutes. But the other thing we just need to consider, as well, you know, we've talked about organisers, we've talked about venues. We do need to talk about attendees, either ourselves as attendees at events, or what would be expected from people who are coming, coming to our events. And I think I said this the last time we spoke. Communication is going to be the absolute key. Telling people what is expected of them. Telling people what you are doing as the event organizer. I mean, health and safety has never been a sales tool for getting people to events. It's kind of assumed that somewhere somebody has considered that as part of the event planning process. But I think now more than ever, people are going to want to see what your policies and procedures are, how you've worked with the venue, what you've got in place, especially if there's an overnight stay. But also consider travel measures. How are people getting to and from your event? What is expected of them? And really sort of clue them into what's going on, so that A, they feel like you've gone through the right process, and it gives them confidence and faith that you are taking it seriously, but also so you don't have any challenges or problems when you get to the, and if you've made the decision that it's vaccine or you're not allowed in, make sure you communicate that, because ultimately you don't want someone to turn up and find out that that's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah. I do think, Rob, as well, that it depends on the type of event, doesn't it, as well, very much. You know, if it's a kind of business, like, you know, straightforward event about, you know, in the daytime in the business, you know, I think people are going to behave impeccably and follow all the rules and behave, you know, the guidelines that they've been given. When it's at, say, a festival or something, you know, it's going to be a bit different, isn't it? You know, that's no disrespect to festival goers. My kids are both going to Leeds, but you know, I think that's the way it is. You know, people hugging each other, they're getting emotional with the music and what have you. It's going to be difficult, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Your business event's not completely emotional, then, Neil. You're not finding that with your business.
I did a lot of pharmaceutical events, Rob. They weren't really emotional at the time.
That's a good point, though, which is obviously, you know, if you add alcohol into an event or any situation, whether it's just an evening drinks reception or whatever it is. We've all got the stories of corporates getting messy in the evening or as part of a party atmosphere, and you know, you as an organizer, as a brand or a client who's actually putting something together, you have a duty of care to your staff members And should things go awry and a host of them come down with coronavirus, it's going to be a very difficult moment. You're going to have to prove that you did everything you could to keep them safe.
Yeah, and who's going to confront them, Rob, as well? Absolutely. Some people are going to have to confront these people. I mean, and should that be us? Does that mean added security? What do you do with those people? It's going to be. There's a lot of questions, isn't there? We need to know the answers.
We bleat on about risk assessment, but a risk assessment really is just proactively thinking about what could go wrong. So all you have to do is just look at all the elements of your event and consider that could be a problem. We can either completely get rid of that problem, or if we're going to still have an issue there, how do we make it as safe as we possibly can? And then write it down. Because my colleague John always says, if it's not written down, it's like it didn't happen. Make sure that you train your staff. Make sure that everyone understands and there's a briefing. Make sure that you have people signed to say that they've gone through that briefing, so that if there are any problems later on, you can go back and prove that that happened. But yeah, it's just giving that extra element and that extra oversight and that extra consideration now that you may or may not have done before. And of course, not forgetting, COVID's not the only thing that can get you. We still have to consider all the other things we had to risk assess before. But that's just one element of it.
Yeah, so what I would say as well is, do you think that people will have to sign disclosure agreement or something, a disclaimer agreement, sorry, when delegates, when they arrive, or even festival goers or whatever? Do you think people might have to sign something? I mean, this could be a reality, couldn't it? They have to sign a disclaimer to say that, I'm turning up without COVID, or I've tested without COVID, and I'm going to follow all the rules, kind of things, to cover the organisers and the client's back, I think.
I haven't flown for well over a year now, and used to fly quite regularly with work. I don't know what the airlines are doing, but I assume that there's some level of disclaimer that gets completed, or a tick box on the website as part of the booking, or whatever it happens to be. And yeah, I think we could, as event organisers, we could look at that as well. But certainly, I was more considering, when we do staff and we brief our staff teams, and whether that's everybody from those on the registration desk or catering or whatever it is. Everybody just has to have an understanding of what their job role is, how it could be impacted by COVID, and making sure that they do everything and they've asked every question that they've got to make sure that it's a sensible approach afterwards.
Yeah, couple of comments. One from Sally, a couple from Sally Kevin. I'm planning a 2-day business event in July for 1,250 people. Sleepless night incoming after this. After this, contact Rob. For any problems, any information and guidance, contact Rob. He will be gladly help you, Sally, with a big event like that, definitely. She also says, go on.
It's not. It's something that can be looked at and mitigated against. And I mean, we totted it up. I think since this whole COVID thing started, I think we ran events or venues or with our leisure clients somewhere in the region of 250,000 people last year. And we had 9 reported cases come into us from people who'd attended events, but none of them were multiples. So it's not like we had 2 from the same event. So I'm taking that as a success, I think. But we put a lot of procedures in place, a lot of staff training, and ultimately we now know more about coronaviruses than I ever thought we would.
Yeah, and I've just got the results of our. Do you think delegates will come to events, or will the numbers be down? And it was 30% of people said, yes, I think they will come back, and 70% said yes, but not as fast as we would like. So kind of slightly positive, but cautious. And as I say, it's a bit similar to the poll that we ran today about, your business going forward. Very kind of similar feel to it as well.
I do have a hope, though, Neil, that as various massive companies are reducing their office space requirements, they're instigating more working from home. I do have this hope and this feeling that in a time in the future that we can't yet properly see, that there will be a need to go, we haven't got everyone together for a long time, we should do that. And actually that will hope to really drive all our businesses forward.
Yeah.
But actually, go and see all of your colleagues every day and getting that real sort of interaction and level of, whether it's training and knowledge and understanding, or whether it's literally just that sort of camaraderie that you might get in a large office building. I think there could be growth in that element, venues in central London, or even out of London now, because there's nothing to draw people in, whatever it is. I think there could be a real growth opportunity.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I think everybody's had enough of being locked down. Once they've had the vaccination, I think we're going to come roaring back. My wife Diane always talks about the roaring 20s, boom back after a depression. So I think it will come back. I do think there will be some mistakes and some education needed at the beginning, but I think we'll get better. Venues will get better. I've just noticed a really good question from Anika. Hi, Anika. Who will be liable if, like, a delegate does break the rules? Will it be the delegates, the clients, the venue? Have we had any inkling on whose fault that might be, Rob? What will happen there?
It depends how that really manifests itself. I mean, if, at any time, at any venue, pre-COVID, you had the opportunity or the possibility that a delegate would do something that they shouldn't do. I mean, I've heard and witnessed some really challenging moments, particularly when alcohol's involved. And I've had a staff member delegate from a very big company rush the stage at the CEO. That was quite a scary moment because you then had to get all this chat off again. That would be dealt with, I would guess, as part of your normal sort of internal procedure because it was an internal event at that point. But you're right. What happens if it's somebody who's come to a joining event or it's just a normal business event or whatever, and they choose to misbehave? I guess that it's treated as if they effectively were drunk and disorderly or misbehaving at an event site or whatever. I think we all have to take some responsibility here. How it's managed and the processes and the procedures and the paperwork that goes behind that. Now that's a different story. That will come down to a combination of the organiser and the venue and making sure that all of their policies and procedures are aligned. It is a good question.
Yeah. So, Rob, I've got to ask you a very unfair question here. We've got about 5 minutes to go. So, this is crystal ball time. So, Rob Haworth, tell me, what do you think? How long do you think it's going to take until events can be back to normal, where we might not need to be tested, or there might be minimal disruption to kind of what we knew before COVID?
I don't know, as you're well aware. I think it all depends now on how the government, the government's restrictions play out. I think if we are able to keep to the roadmap that we're in, we don't have any weird variants. I think Q3, Q4 this year, we could really start to see some movement. But I still think that there's going to be some people. I've got a thing of hand sanitizer in my car, and it sits in the door pocket. And I was thinking to myself the other day, I might just keep this in here forever,
Yeah.
I think this is fundamentally changed the way some people think about things, view things. I mean, I'm quite happy with the 2 meter distancing rule. That works quite nicely between me and the kids, for starters, let alone people I don't know. So I do wonder whether it's going to have a real long-term impact on how we approach things, what we think about. I really think that it is. But in terms of really getting back to some level of normality, it all depends now on the vaccine program, which, I mean, the politics aside, I'm astounded at how well that is going. It's unbelievable how quickly they are able to vaccinate people. Although I did hear Matt Hancock, the health secretary, say that they've based it around the principles of the film 28 Days Later. So if government policy is now being driven by Hollywood, who knows what's next?
I like that film, but it does scare me that the government are basing their policies on that.
And there was nobody here. It's unbelievable.
Right. Well, Rob, that's been amazing. Guys, thank you. So many questions in the chat room. I'm just going to see one more from Sarah Felfel again. Says, unfortunately, we could be heading into a third winter wave in Q4. Well, who knows? I mean, but you do hear about Europe going into a third lockdown and stuff like that. But I guess that's because they're not having as many vaccinations as us. That's one of part of the reasons, I guess.
I know. I mean, we're always generally busy in January, February as people start to line up their program of events for the year.
Yeah.
And even as mid-December, I was saying to the rest of the team, get ready, hold on, guys, because January is going to be crazy. And we went. So one of our offices is in Gloucester, where I'm based. And we went from tier 2 to tier 4 to national lockdown in 22 days or whatever it was. And of course, at that point, nothing happened in January. And so, you know, I have a small business, I have a team, I'm responsible for paying people mortgages every month, and it's just guesswork. It's not particularly enjoyable at times, but you've just got to keep fighting, haven't you, Neil?
Absolutely, keep fighting. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, Rob, thank you so much for today. That has been really enlightening. Thanks for sharing us the time from your beautiful home, your drawing room of your beautiful home there. I'm going to remember that 2 meter distance and from the kids. That's a really good idea. Only kidding. So thanks, Rob. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody for asking all the questions as well. Rob will put the links up to. We'll put the links up for Rob's, his courses and his website, and you can ask him any questions, and I'm sure Rob will get back to you as well. He's a great guy. So on with the final part of the show. What's coming up next on the show? If Callum can just kindly show the graphics, because I can't remember. I know Mandy, the amazing Mandy Jennings on next week from Page Consultancy, giving us a sales masterclass. So that can be appropriate for you if you work in an agency for selling to your clients, or also if you're in a venue or you're an event supplier yourself. Look out for that one, guys. Mandy's amazing. Before that, guys, for any new members of Delegate Wranglers, we've got an onboarding session with Diane on this Thursday at 1 o'clock. So if you just head over to the link that's at the top there, delegatewranglers.com/DW-broadcast, you can find out all our future shows there and sign up for them in one place. So we thought we'd make it a bit easier for you than giving you individual links. Then we've got another DW Superstars webinar next Thursday. And then following that, the following week, the 30th of March, we've got a time management class, masterclass, with Laura Capelabra. Really looking forward to that. I love time management hacks and things like that. So look out for those coming up in the next few weeks. So I'm going to, before I say goodbye, just going to mention that we're going to play, just before the closing credits, we're going to play the weekly lowdown that we did with Mash Media. It's a little bulletin of positive news items from my good friend, Mr. Martin Fullard from Mash Media, who's doing amazing work for the industry. So look out for that at the end. I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody involved with the show, you guys for watching and listening, everybody on YouTube, everybody on Facebook. We really appreciate your support. Please give us a follow on our YouTube channel. Just search on the Delegate Wranglers, and it'd be massively helpful if you could do that. We've always got tons of new content on there as well. Big thank you to Stream and to Events Case for registration. Massive thank you to Events as well for once again sponsoring this season of the Delegate Wrangler shows. We'll put the links up to how you can book a private session with them, so they can give you a demo and much more. So without any further ado, I'll say goodbye now, and we'll go first to Marty with the weekly lowdown, and then we will close. So thanks a lot, guys. See you next week. Have a good Tuesday.
Hello and welcome to the Delegate Wranglers Weekly Lowdown with Mash Media. I'm Martin Fullard. Now, I've got some really positive news stories to share with you today, and it's really exciting. Venues have seen a 294% increase in event inquiries since the Prime Minister made his announcement on the 22nd of February that hopefully we can get cracking with some live events from the 21st of June. Now, this came from digital marketing agency called Patch, and they said its clients, which are mostly London-based venues, have seen a large uptick in inquiries from both corporate and private events. Some venues have even reported an increase in inquiries of 550%, which is mad. Now, the majority of these bookings are kind of focused in Q3 and Q4 of this year, but there are some in Q2 as well, and even some as late as the end of 2022. So there's certainly a growing sentiment and confidence in bookings. Now, elsewhere in the agency world, we're starting to see the same sort of picture emerge. Milton Keynes-based agency Julia Charles Event Management told me this week that they've seen a 41% increase in corporate inquiries, and they say that it's worth a potential £420,000. In March, they said that private client services saw growth of 33% in bookings and nearly 120% of inquiries compared to February just a month earlier. Now, I asked them what corporates wanted in terms of reassurance before committing to live, and they all say the same thing: flexibility in terms and conditions. They want venues and suppliers to be flexible because there's always that chance that things can change, events might need to move. So we want to make sure we're seeing lots of flexibility across the sector. Now, casting our eyes further afield, you might remember in February last year when Mobile World Congress announced that it was cancelling its 2020 show. That sent ripples through the events industry, and that's really the first big show that fell. That was big news at the time. Well, if you want to know how far we've come, then the good news is that the 2021 Mobile World Congress is indeed going ahead in Barcelona for 50,000 people compared to the 100,000 it would normally host. But it is going to be fully hybrid. It's going to be fascinating to see how they manage this hybrid event and engaging people all around the world. There is, of course, a lot of health and safety focus on this, and we have got more information about that. So if you'd like to learn more, you can read more on Conference and Meetings World. So lastly, the last thing I want to share with you today is that there has been movement in Westminster with regards to helping smaller businesses claim additional restrictions grants. The government has said that local authorities should consider events businesses as eligible for the ARGs. Now, event businesses of all kinds have never been explicitly told by government that they have to close, but they've not been legally allowed to operate. So we've sort of been closed by proxy, and you'll know that's caused a great deal of frustration and upset. However, despite the fact that these funds are still discretionary, particularly for non-rateable businesses, the government has intervened and told local authorities they have to consider events businesses. So that is another big and positive step. And that this week is your weekly lowdown.